Well. Dark Brandon is out giving speeches again, and he seems to be an angry man. And just perhaps, we should listen to his warnings. Let's talk. Hello, all my friends on YouTube and Rockfin. Let's talk about Dark Brandon's speech last night. There are a couple of things that I think we really need to consider about it, and that is, of course, let me just give you the basics, and we'll get to the points that I think people in America need to listen to, people who are opposed to the activities of Dark Brandon and his ilk, and people in the EU need to pay close attention to, because let's face it, when the US gets what is it? When the US sneezes, the EU gets a cold. So I think what Dark Brandon is saying is not going to just be for us. I think he's given us some warnings that we need to heed, and we will hear this stuff again. So let's talk. All right. So Dark Brandon gives a speech. We'll start here basically with this. The midterms are coming, right? The midterms are next Tuesday, and the polls say, as if if you saw a while back, I was on Galloway, I believe I said this first, and I said I think they're going to get taking a beating of biblical proportions, right? I think they're really going to get beaten pretty bad, and the reason is because the neocons are in charge. The Biden administration is the neocon administration, the ultimate neocon administration, the Dick Cheney, the administration, basically, a Victoria Nuland administration. And the thing to remember about these people, a couple of things to remember about them. And that is, number one, they have no care about domestic policy. And here's the reason: because they don't care about the littles. They don't care about the average person. They have nothing but contempt for the average person. They see the world as a grand chessboard. They're about power. They're about maintaining power, all that kind of stuff, and authority. They're very totalitarian-minded people. And to them, people like us, why we question them, we don't know our place. So they have nothing but contempt for us. They hate our guts. They can't stand us, right? Keep that in mind. So when old Dark Brandon gives his speech yesterday, the polls, if you were a politician who thought about the people, or at least had some consideration, you acknowledged their existence. You would read the polls and you would write a speech, as most politicians do, that say, okay, here's what the polls say. Even if you were going to lie, you'd read the polls and you would just do some lies about some things that were in the polls, and you'd move on, right? I often say these people are sociopaths, they're narcissists, they're psychopaths, right? People like that. Think about this. The psychopath or the sociopath, even the narcissist, they don't acknowledge that you have feelings. To them, you are nothing but a means to an end. What can they use you for? How can you benefit them? A person, so if you say you're hurting my feelings, they'll say, I don't understand the concept. If you say, I need X, they'll say, I don't understand the concept. What can you do for me? What can you offer me? How can you benefit the things I'm trying to do? And if you can't, then you are disposable. Then get out of the way, and I'll find somebody else who can benefit me. Therefore, Dark Brandon's speech last night was simply, I got something I want to accomplish, and don't get in the way, right? Don't be the one that gets in the way. We're trying to do this worldwide power thing, and we're trying to maintain power. Shut up and get out of the way and know your place. That's the way they think. If you're wondering why Dark Brandon would do a speech, if you're wondering why the leader of a country, in air quotes, leader in air quotes, of a country. I mean, how do you call a guy who wanders aimlessly around a stage? Most of the time, when Dark Brandon gives a speech, he wanders aimlessly around the stage after the speech for longer than it actually took him to give the damn speech. But it's like his arms are out like this. He's walking to the edge of the stage over here. I don't know if you've seen the latest video. He walks to the edge of the stage, and Kamala Harris is running up behind him like you do a little kid, like trying to grab him, like, oh no, Dark Brandon, don't walk over the edge of the stage. So at any rate, Well, he's the leader of this country, per se. We know he's the puppet of this country. He has no concern for the people. So all this speech yesterday was written by people who were like, okay, we need to maintain power. Let's make sure these bastards know they're supposed to do our bidding, and if they don't, then screw them. We'll pound them into the ground, because that's how they think. Look at their foreign policy. Look how they're treating the people in the EU. Right? Look how they blew the hell up uh, um, the Nord Stream pipeline. You see how these people think. They're totalitarian. They're brutal, vicious people, and they are psychopaths, right? Okay, so Dark Brandon's out there. He gives that speech, right? There's something to think about the speech. Now we can talk about what he said, but let's go here. I want to look at a couple of passages, shall we say, from the speech, and see if we can make anything out of it. Let's go here. All right. So he says, and we're going to look at the beginning. He does a lot of talk about these election deniers, which again shows that they're out of touch, right? It shows that they don't have any real understanding of us, any understanding of any self-awareness. Because if they had self-awareness, they would say, well, we spent 4 years with this Russiagate hoax, and we can't very well tell people you can't be an election denier because we spent 4 years as an election denier. But as sociopaths and psychopaths, they don't even get that. Hey, what are you talking about? What we did for 4 years? They don't get it. Do what we're told, right? Let's read this. As I stand here today, there are candidates running for every level of office in America, for governor, Congress, attorney general, secretary of state, who will not commit to accepting the results of the election that they're running in, right? If you know anything about American, I'll put it like this. Let's before we go any further with that, we're going to continue with this, but you got to understand something. I've been saying, and a lot of people have been saying for years, we use machines that are unaccountable. They have proprietary software. Many of these machines have no paper ballots, no way of actually tracking what happened. And in fact, a guy named Tim Canova, let me fill you in on that, since we're talking about elections for just a second. So you'll know this history. You might not know. Tim Canova ran against Debbie Wasserman Schultz, which was one of Hillary Clinton's right-hand women. And afterwards, when they started counting, they found that he got like the exact, and he was like in the polls, kind of close to tie for had a chance. He lost by like 30 points. Well, that doesn't make sense. The polls are never off by that much. So he started to look into it. And he found that he got the exact same numbers, the exact same percentages in all categories. For instance, Black women, I'm just going to use a number, 1.47%. Black men, 1.47%. Old people, 1.47%. Young people, 1.47. People with left-handed, 1.47. So basically, in a nutshell, it wasn't an improbability. It was an impossibility, right? So some people looked into it at a particular university. I think it was Georgia Tech, it might have been. But at any rate, they looked at it and they said the odds against this are like 4 billion to 1. In other words, it ain't happening, right? Okay. So he went to court, and the court ordered the state of Florida to see, when you use the machine in Florida to vote, the machine kept an image of your ballot. It kept an image on the machine. So Tim Canova goes to, and I'm not challenging anything. This happened. It was all proven in his lawsuit. Tim Canova then goes to court, and the court says to the state of Florida, you have to provide him with images of every ballot. That would allow him to go ballot by ballot to do a fair recount and see how in the hell he ended up with the exact same percentage in old, young, black, white, green, gray, and grizzly. An absolute, not an improbability, literally an impossibility, right? He does this, goes back to the state of Florida, says, okay, the court has said you got to give me copies of all of the images, right? Now, keep in mind something. It is a federal crime to destroy these ballots. After the court ordered the The state of Florida, to provide him with images, the state of Florida destroyed all the images, destroyed them all. Federal crime. You would now think that somebody would be, would be held accountable for that, right? Well, you would be wrong if you thought that. Nobody was charged. Nobody was held accountable. That's it. They did it after the court said you can't destroy the images of all the ballots. They're like, oh, we can't. Yeah, hey, what do we destroy the images of all the ballots? Imagine that. Nothing fishy there. So here's my thing about it. When he says people won't commit that they will accept the results of the election that they're running in, here's the thing: you have a right. No, you don't have to. And let me add this: by law, let's talk about the law for a second. There are a lot of states in which, if the or municipality states, etc., where if the election is within a certain, let's say it's under 2% or under 1% between the winner and the loser, that you automatically have a recount. So if you're in a state that automatically has a recount and you look and it's like, hey, I lost by 1.67%, and the state law says there's an automatic recount, well, you don't have to accept it. You can say, they can say, did you lose? And you can say, I'm not accepting this. I'm going to wait for the recount. When the recount comes, I may accept it then, right? That's perfectly legal to say that. Or if you have a right to a recount, let's say you lose by one, but there's 1.5 million votes and you lose by one vote, and they say you lost. You can say, by law, I have a right to a recount. Are you going to concede to your opponent? You can say, by law, I have a right to a recount. I'm not conceding yet. I lost by one vote. There could have been a mistake somewhere. Let's do a recount. So while Joe Biden says people won't commit to losing, can I ask you a question? 2016, did Hillary commit to losing to Trump? She would never admit it. She would never say she lost. She would go on and on. He said it. She said it. Everybody, the whole Democratic Party would never commit. To this day, they say it was stolen from him. Trump was an illegitimate president. But what Biden is saying is, you, our opponents, can't do it. We can. So, okay, so let's get back to this. I wanted to tell that little story. Let's get back to this, reading this. We got plenty to talk about tonight, plenty to cover. Here's the part. I'll read it again. As I stand here today, there are candidates running for every level of office in America. This is Dark Brandon in his speech. For governor, Congress, attorney general, secretary of state, who won't commit. Sorry about that. That will not commit to accepting the results of the election that they're running in. Look, you can say whatever you want to. Supposedly, First Amendment, you can say what you want. And as I said, there are legal options that people have. If somebody wants a recount, they could call the election early. Well, there's 92% in and this person's up, and the person says, I will not accept that until 100% is in. So there are any number of reasons a person may not accept it. One being a recount, the other being all the numbers aren't in yet. So what? We're supposed to have a First Amendment. But then he goes on to say, listen to this. This is the path to chaos in America. You're welcome to your opinion. Guess what? Dark Brandon, we have a right, should have a right to say what we want. You can have a right to say that. I don't have any problem with that if that's what he believes. But listen to next. It's unprecedented. Well, that's a lie, because 2016, your ass did it, Dark Brandon. You and your entire party did it. So it's not unprecedented. It's very precedented. But next, it's unlawful and it's un-American. Really? First of all, if it's un-American, why did Hillary Clinton and everyone around her refer to Donald Trump as an illegitimate president for years and nobody said a word? But that ain't the part. It's unlawful. No, it's not unlawful, Dark Brandon. It's not unlawful at all. There's nothing illegal about saying, I don't accept it. You could lose by 1 million points. What happened? God, I could run for president, which I've thought about. And I could get 0.0000000. I could get one vote. I could get, like they do at when you go to, like, on a sale, the friends and family plan, when you get, you like join your phone, get a new phone deal. I could have friends and family only vote for me. How many votes did you get? Well, let's see. There's cousin Fred. There's Aunt Mary. 14. I could get 14 out of 336 million people in the country. I could get 14 votes and they could say, did you lose? And I could say, I refuse to accept my loss. I got free speech. I should have free speech. So it should never be unlawful for you to say what the hell you want. And that could be a crock of crap. It could be completely wrong. Obviously, I lost by 100 million votes, but I should be able to say, I don't think I lost. Why? Because the First Amendment protects speech, even if it's wrong and even if it's false. Technically, that is not unlawful. It is perfectly lawful. You don't have to tell the truth to be protected. You can lie, you can be wrong. I could be crazy. I could be mentally ill, right? I could be angry. I could just be the kind of person that says, I don't trust the elections. All of them are lies, right? It doesn't matter. That should be protected speech. But Dark Braden says it's unlawful. Let's look in this a little bit deeper. Let's go a little bit deeper. And I'm going to show you something that's very alarming that came out today, right? You ready? Are you ready? And watch this too, people in the EU. White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain, Biden's speech was, listen to this, one final warning on democracy and political violence. White House Chief of Staff characterized President Biden's speech last night, making the case that election denier Republicans are a danger to the future of democracy. Think about this. Election deniers, after all the time they spent saying Trump, being election deniers. So to some extent, you got to give them credit. They got something here. They're certainly a danger to democracy, and they're long-term election deniers. So it just depends on who it is. And their danger to democracy wasn't that they were election deniers. It was that they used the intelligence community of the United States to try and overturn the election. That's the problem I have. Illegally use the FBI and the Russia hoax and other intelligence agencies in other countries. They used the Five Eyes and they did everything they could, literally violated the law of our country and other countries to overturn the 2016 election. So yeah, it is dangerous. But okay, so let's go on. White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain characterized President Biden's speech last night, making the case that election denier Republicans. So it's, well, you got to give them credit. They didn't say election denier. They were very specific. They said election denier Republicans. In other words, hey, there's election deniers. We got to go after them. Whoa, time out. Before we go after them, are they Republicans or Democrats? They're Democrats. They're good. Oh, wait a minute. There's a couple of election deniers over there that are Republicans. My God, they're a danger to democracy. They must pay. This injustice must not stand, but only if they're Republicans. So, okay, let's read the whole thing. I'll put it all together. White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain characterized President Biden's speech last night, making the case that election denier Republicans are a danger to the future of democracy, was one final warning ahead of next week's midterm elections. The president has been talking about the threat to our democracy since he launched his campaign way back in 2019, and again on January 6th, and again in September, Klain told MSNBC's Morning Joe. So think about that term. Let's talk about it for 1 second. They're a danger to democracy, and he gave one final warning. Doesn't that imply something? You know, think about it. Your mother says, Garland, you better stop doing that. All right, Mom. And then I do it again. She says, I'm telling you for the last time, Garland. Well, that implies something. I may be in trouble. I may get, all right, Garland, I told you for the last time, you're not going to be able to ride your bike, or you're not going to be able to play with your video games. Go to your room. You're going to have to stay in there for 1 hour. It could be anything, right? Okay. You said you wanted some ice cream. No ice cream tonight. You know, after dinner, you don't get any ice cream tonight, whatever, right? So, whatever it is, right? But one final warning implies something very, very clear. For instance, right now, if any country was to say to another country, we are issuing one final warning for country X to stop doing this on our border, they don't have to say anything else, because you kind of, it is implied with the term one final warning that it's over. I'm not warning it anymore. What is implied is I am going to take action against you. And it is strongly implied. Think of any reasonable adult, even a child, a little teeny weeny child. Hey, you better stop that. Mommy, I don't want to stop. Okay, I'm telling you for the last time. That means the child's going to be in trouble. They're going to be in trouble. I'm taking your toy. No! Right? But You gave them a final warning. We've all done. If you got kids, you've done that. I'm telling you, you better stop that, or you're not going to be able to watch TV for an hour. Whatever, anything, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you're going to do something cataclysmic, but it implies something very clear. I'm not warning you. Now, think about it. Before they say it's a danger to the future of democracy. So they're saying this is a big one. This is huge. This is destroying everything. And we're giving you one final warning. And they make it clear election denier Republicans, which means people in this party only. Now, of course, we also know when they say that, they also mean it doesn't matter if you're a lefty like me, doesn't matter if you're a Republican, doesn't matter if you're an independent or a libertarian. It goes for libertarians too, right? All of us. What it means is if you're one of the people who push back against the mainstream narrative and you say, for instance, for years I've said, I don't trust these voting machines. How can I possibly trust voting machines that don't have a paper ballot, don't have any way to track who voted? I'm just supposed to trust it. And now I say, how am I supposed to trust a voting machine when the voting machine maintains an image of everybody that voted, and the government gets rid of the images as soon as the court says show them to me? What person? So I'm not an election denier. I can put honest, using critical thinking, I can put data, empirical data, right, that supports my argument that I should, at minimum, have some level of distrust. And it's not just like, hey, I don't trust them, they're going to steal it. It's, let's look at what has happened. Let's look at the data. I cannot properly, in many states, in many municipalities and jurisdictions, you cannot properly verify the voting process. So that would leave one to have some level of question. It's not unreasonable. It's not crazy election denying when you can put forth empirical data to support your skepticism, shall we say, your legitimate and healthy skepticism. Remember, when Dark Brandon and crew were talking about, what was it earlier? They were talking about, domestic terrorism. They said domestic terrorism could be people who didn't trust capitalism. You don't have to trust capitalism. Who didn't trust NATO, who said things of that nature. Simply, they have a political narrative, and a person who doesn't trust their political narrative, no matter how solidly, no matter how much information you can present, how much data you can present to substantiate the level of distrust that you have, what they're saying is you can be seen as a domestic terrorist, or now they're saying he's given a final warning. That implies a crackdown. Does it? I mean, I don't think I'm crazy that when the president says there are people out here doing X, those people are a danger to the future of our democracy, I'm giving them one final warning. That's three things. Put those together, right? There are people out here who are committing an act. That act is a danger to our country, our nation, our democracy, the foundation of everything we stand on, right? So I've identified who's doing it. I've identified what they're doing. I've identified why that act is dangerous and how dangerous it is. And I'm giving them one final warning. That means no more warnings. That certainly doesn't mean I'm just going to walk away and say, hey, guys, I gave you one final warning. Well, we ain't listening. Oh, okay, see you later. No, that implies there will be some kind of punitive action. There will be punitive action taken. And why do I say the people in the EU should listen? We'll get to that in a minute. The president decided a few days ago, listen to this, that it was important to issue one final warning, Klain said, to make very clear, to leave no doubt that we still have people out there peddling the big lie, now raising the question of election denial in this election. And of course, the horrible incident involving Speaker Pelosi and her family. What the hell does that have to do with election denying? Showing the rising threat of political violence. Number one. And number two, the guy wasn't a Republican. Number one, I think it was a Green Party or something. He was an illegal immigrant from Canada, right? But here's the bottom line. The guy seemed to be mentally ill. And there are a lot of questions. For instance, he didn't seem to have broken in. How did he get in the house? Yes, there is something very fishy about that. But they're taking that and they're using that. And they're saying the rising threat of political violence. Well, they're putting that together now. They're saying election denier Threat of political violence. You know where they're going with that? They're going to domestic terrorism. So now they can say you are a domestic terrorist. You can be branded a domestic terrorist. Does that mean you can be charged with a crime? Certainly sounds like it. It certainly sounds like you can be thrown you off of social media, things of that nature. There will definitely, there's an implication here that there is somebody put male prostitute. I don't know. I don't know what was going on there, but I'm just saying. Something, something was rotten in Denmark there. All right. I probably don't want to know if you want the truth. But here's the bottom line. The implication is now the thought police are out. I don't believe that the election was fair. You say that, right? Oh, okay, you're an election denier. You're subverting democracy. You're a danger to our democracy. I've gave my one final warning. Bing, you're a domestic terrorist, which means, guess what else? Don't forget, under Obama, one of the things that were, no, it was Bush. There was a guy named Jose Padilla. One of the things they did, who I think also, if he had some level of mental illness, he didn't know what the hell was going on, and he got caught in the usual FBI kind of trap. But the bottom line is, that was when they came out and said, if you're an American citizen can be deemed an enemy combatant and then deprived of their constitutional rights. What shred of constitutional rights we have left, I might add. So what they're looking at now, if you look at the paperwork they had earlier, you can look this stuff up about domestic terrorism. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think anybody watching this video would say it's not unreasonable. I'm not making a huge leap of logic to say one final warning means you're making a threat and you're saying there's a threat of political violence. Remember, that stuff's all written in that domestic terrorism stuff, right? Was political violence. So now they're going to tie political violence to election denying. You're a terrorist, dude, and you got no constitutional rights. Have a nice ride. Have a nice time in Gitmo, right? In Gold Camp X-Ray, right? So, but keep in mind, apparently they had a talk. The president decided a few days ago, they've talked about it, that it was important to issue one final warning. Think about that. Well, I think I'm just going to take these dogs out and execute all of them. Wait, whoa. Before I execute them, I got to make one final warning. What do I know? I think we got to call these people domestic terrorists and take them all away and charge them and take everything they got. Not so fast. Before we do that, one final warning. I'm not saying that's what it is, but I ain't saying that's what it ain't either, right? So I think that is of great consequence. I think we should be concerned with that. Let's look at some other stuff. Why do I think the people in the EU should be concerned? Let's look at this. A couple of things. Italy freezes arms supplies to Ukraine. Rome is easing up on its arms supplies to Ukraine amid Kiev's ongoing military conflict. Il Messaggio reported on Tuesday, citing sources within the Italian government that claim no new weapons packages are under consideration. Now, they're going to talk about it, right? But a lot of us had a feeling this was coming. When the new government came in and they were like, yes, sir, oh boy, nothing like Ukraine. Way to go there, Olinsky. You're the man. You the man. You the man. Let's chest bump, fist bump. You the man, right? But we heard, what was the guy, Berlusconi, saying, me and Putin are old friends. And hey, we heard that he had come out and said, look, Zelensky, you guys started this crap. Come on, chill out. And we need to get this thing ended, right? The implications were clear. And I don't believe that those leaks were accidental leaks. You know how the game plays if you know anything about politicians. 80% of the leaks that come out of government ain't accidental. But Berlusconi said this, they let this stuff out. It was a clear message that while the prime minister was screaming, yes, we love Zelensky and we're doing everything for him, and this is it. On the inside, they were like, wink, wink, wink. We ain't going along with this crap. Our people didn't elect us to go along with it, and we're going to do what we got to do. And on the surface, we're going to say what we got to say, but we ain't necessarily going along with it, right? You know how that works. That's the start. And they're going to say, hey, man, we'd love to give you weapons, but we're running out ourselves. So, I mean, look, we'd like to give you more weapons, but we're running a little short. We'll give you a call if we got a few more. Hey, this is Italy. Would you like some olives? We got lots of olive oil, maybe some pasta. We can help you out there. But olive oil is good for you, make you live long. Look at us, we're Italian, we live long, right? You got pretty girls in Italy. Oh, let's see, olive oil, pasta, lots of fresh vegetables. You're gonna love that, but you ain't getting no HIMARS from us. Not happening. Game, set, and match, right? That is clearly an indication that as these governments start to change and as the people put pressure on these governments, the volume is going to get turned down on this pro-Ukraine stuff. Let's go to another one. And I'm making a point here. And I'm saying why the people in the EU need to pay attention to Dark Brandon. Always pay attention to Dark Brandon. Serbian president warns of hellish winter. Alexander Vucic pointed to rising electricity and gas prices in Europe with cold weather approaching. European countries are in for a hell of a winter. They'll be wishing they were in hell so they can be a little bit warmer. We'll be in for a hell of a winter due to the skyrocketing cost of energy, Serbian President Alexander Vucic said on Thursday. Meanwhile, the government in Belgrade has done its best to stockpile natural gas in case the pipeline supplying the fuel via Turkey is sabotaged. Think about what he said. He threw another little elbow there. Yeah, in case Tony Blinken and crew decide to blow ours too. He made it clear. He didn't say, I'm worried about some miscreant terrorist. He's like, just in case. They could all get blown. We don't know now. He says, colder weather will start in 5 to 7 days, and then Europe will start to burn its gas reserves. He said, yesterday the price of gas was, so you get the point, what Vucic is saying. You guys are screwed. Serbian president noted that this will also make electricity more expensive, pointing to a similar jump in price on the European spot market, right? He said Serbia is well prepared, having stockpiled plenty of gas. The people of Serbia have no reason to worry, right? So he goes on, and he says Moscow's blamed the UK for orchestrating the sabotage, which London has denied. Serbia is not a member of the EU and has not joined the bloc's sanctions against Moscow. Serbia is a friend of, let's face it, they're a friend of Russia. Okay, so what am I getting at here? Why do I bring that in? What we're seeing is a couple of things. We're seeing Italy start to back up out of this thing and say, man, we ain't down with all of this crap. And guess what happened when they did it? What do you know? Italy said, we ain't giving weapons. We're chilling out. We want to get along with Russia. And they're somehow just serendipitously, their gas started flowing from Russia again. What do you know? This is not rocket science. It's, your gas starts, maybe there's some problems in there's I don't know, maybe some spiders made a nest in the pipe and the mice might have chewed a hole in the pipe. I don't know, but it's not flowing so well. And all of a sudden you're like, look, we ain't down with this grain stuff, the Ukraine crap. Hey, what do you know? It seems that the spiders in the pipe seems to have been fixed. Maybe they got those webs out of there. Winter ain't going to be so bad. And he's throwing some elbows at the rest of Europe saying, you dumb sons of, look, you're going to suffer. Winter's going to be hell for you, and he's kind of saying, and you kind of got it coming. Now, here's my point with all of that, right? Winter's going bad. Italy's wised up. Italy has wised up and said, look, guys, I think we're going to make friends with Russia and stay warm. We don't want to be cold, right? We're seeing the streets packed with people. We're seeing, particularly in Eastern Europe, isn't that interesting? Moldova, the poorest country in Europe, the people are in the streets saying, this is some bull crap, man. We want our gas, right? The poorer countries, hey, look, man, they're already closer to the edge. The Eastern European countries are poor. Two things. They're very poor and they're close to Russia. Some of these countries are relying on Russia for gas and electricity and lots of other things that they need from Russia. They're just trying to survive. They're just trying to eat, That's one of the things, I put it like that in various cultures. People use particular terms, right? In America, Black community, one of the things that saying eat is a term. I'm just trying to eat. I'm trying to eat. What does that mean? The term eat means survive. I'm just trying to eat means I'm just trying to survive, right? The basics, it means I'm just trying to do the basics to survive. There's other ways that particular term can mean, but for the most part, it is I'm just trying to survive. People will say that's where he eats or that's how he eats. What does that mean? That means that's how he makes a living. That's how he survives, right? Most of the people in Europe are just trying to eat. And so The Serbian president says, dude, we're all here just trying to eat. You guys ain't going to, you're going to have an empty plate. In a number, metaphorically, you're going to have an empty plate, right? So he's pointing it out. Italy's running. And so Dark Brandon and crew are looking at that. They've blown up the Nord Stream pipeline. And people are starting to watch the other pipelines. They're kind of having trouble blowing other ones up. I'm sure they're eyeing some of the other pipelines, but people are watching their pipelines now that they know that Dark Brandon's people are pipeline saboteurs, right? But they're in the streets, and this Ukraine project is going south in a hurry. And as I've said this, I don't think the Russians are stupid. There are people who believe that the Russians are about to that they're going to launch some major lightning aggressive attack and crush the Ukrainians. I think they're going to sit back and watch a bit. What I think they're going to do is they're going to pack their lines. They're going to be defensively strong. They're going to move slowly. They're going to launch. Right now, they're waiting for the weather to get right till the ground's good and frozen. And when it is, I think they'll launch some attacks here. They'll launch some attacks there. I may be wrong. It's possible now that they could launch some major attacks to put this thing down. I don't know. But if you'll notice this about the Russians, they don't seem to be in any rush, do they? They're not in a hurry. Why is that? Because they're allowing nature to take its course. You know, I study Zen. I've studied Zen for years. And one of the things I learned about Zen is everybody's in a rush to act. Don't be in a rush to act. You don't always have to act. I'll put it like this: there's a lot of Zen sayings, and one of them is a discussion of, you know, you come upon a mud puddle, and somebody's walked through it, and the water is all muddy. How do you clear that mud puddle? How do you clear it up? How do you get that puddle that somebody's just stepped through, that there's mud, it's all muddy water? How do you get it clear again? You leave it alone. Sometimes the most prudent act is no act. Right? Bruce Lee said the art of fighting without fighting. Didn't Sun Tzu talked about it, right? The art of the greatest battle you win is the battle you win without fighting. There are times when as you know, I've studied self-defense. A lot of times in self-defense, what is the plan in self-defense? It's not the fight. Some guy walks up. Again, I've had my instructor, but we're best of friends. A guy's a 6th-degree black belt, but we played basketball together for many, many, many. I mean, when I say many years, I mean since we were teenagers. This guy's deadly. He takes somebody apart in seconds, right? Brutally break every bone in their body in seconds. We've been playing. They didn't know him. Threaten him. Oh yeah, you fouled me again. I'll punch you in the face. And what does he say? Hey man, sorry, I don't want any trouble. He could defeat them very easily, but he doesn't want any trouble. Right? Nah, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry I fouled you. And I've seen people, yeah, well, you fouled me again. He's like, you know what? I'm not playing anymore. He'll go get his sneakers or what have you and leave the court. Why? Because he's not going to fight. He doesn't want to engage in a fight. Oftentimes, the wise person is the one who wins without fighting. Right? You allow, and add this. We've heard this. Thank God for allowing my enemy to be fools. Right? Sometimes the best thing you can do is nothing. So I suspect that as Europe and the US fall apart economically and socially, to some extent, Russia wants to, at least the next couple months, I think they want to watch. They got popcorn. You know, I suspect there's some popcorn being passed around on the front lines. I suspect in the Kremlin, they're watching. They got a big screen TV. You know you shovel popcorn in your face when you're watching, it's falling all out of your mouth. You're putting some butter on it. Imagine they're eating a bit of popcorn in the Kremlin. I would be, and I'd be saying, before we launch any major offensives, let's see how this thing plays out a little bit. I think they're going to have some serious problems, right? Particularly, think about this. And again, I'm getting somewhere with here. Particularly when you see your enemies fighting amongst themselves. As I said, there's probably a lot of people here that played sports. Might be rugby, might be soccer, whatever, but everybody knows the same thing. I played in a lot of leagues. I played in high school, community college basketball, played in a lot of leagues, right? And here's what I know. When you see the other team fighting amongst themselves, you're going to win. You know, once you see them argue, why did you pass me the ball? You idiot, blah, blah, blah. You're like, we're going to win. When you see them fighting amongst themselves, you know you got that game is in the bag, right? So I suspect they're sitting back and they're saying, let's watch these people fight amongst themselves. And at some point, they're going to get cold. Let's see who calls first and says, can I get some gas? Hey man, can you help a brother out? Can you give me a little gas? And then the Russians will be there like, man, there's nothing I'd like better than to help you out. But maybe let's work out a little bit of deal. We can do something about a little security arrangement on our border. I think we can come to an agreement where everybody's happy, right? I think that's part of the Russians' plan. It would certainly be mine. Part of my plan would be, let's see how this thing shakes out for at least a month or two before we do anything. They're in trouble. Let's let them fight amongst themselves. And I think one of the things that the Russians did that would be is part of that plan, it would certainly be part of mine, would be it's done if they are in fact the ones that let that out. It seems to me that they're kind of like, hey, look, UK, oh, we hate you. You're the Russians. I know you hate me. Fair enough. You don't have to like me. I don't have to like you. I'm just saying, those guys blew your pipe. Huh? Well, we're pretty good at technology, right? We got hypersonic missiles. You don't. What do you think? Yeah, okay. Well, and Liz Truss is about as sharp as a furry marble. She's about as bright as a wet match in a dark cave. Yeah, I kind of know that. Well, that idiot used her iPhone to text all kind of stuff, and we got the info. Trust me when I tell you this, she blew your friggin' pipe. They're going to be like, well, we don't like you, but yeah, you guys are pretty good at technology, and hell, you probably did hack it, and it does make sense. And apparently the word is that she told Dark Brandon's people and she told Blinken. And as I told you, Tony Blinken wrote a book in 1987 about pipe, which is pretty much like, you know what? If you read his book, it was about Russian gas pipeline. Tony Blinken wrote a book in 1987 about Russian oil pipelines going to the EU. It was almost like OJ's book. If I had done it, this is what I would have done, right? It was kind of one of those things. If I'd actually committed the murders, I mean, of course I didn't. We all know that. But had I committed the murders, this is probably what I would have done, right? It was the same thing. He just wrote out a manifesto of a madman who was eventually going to blow up a friggin' pipeline. And there it was. In fact, they didn't need the Russians. They read Tony Blinken's book. They'd be like, holy crap. And the fact that he said she texted Blinken, not Biden, of course, because he's the pipeline saboteur extraordinary, right? Okay. So that's what I do. And it ain't like I gotta lie. I gotta make stuff up. I'm like, hey, Germany, yeah, they blew your damn pipeline. You know that, huh? Okay, Liz Truss, it's done. iPhone, idiot. What do you think? And they're gonna be like, yeah, we don't like you, but we get it, right? And at that point, you walk, go back over. That's what you do. You're sitting there in the Kremlin in front of the big screen TV and you're eating popcorn. You say, man, these people are idiots. Hey, watch this, dude. Check this out. You head on over to the UK. Hey, you go over to, we got your shit. You go over to Germany. Hey, guys. Yeah, they blew your stuff. And then you go back and you run real quick into the Kremlin and you get your popcorn out and you're going to say, this is going to be fun. And then everybody's high-fiving and fist bumping and stuff. And you're like, all right, let's watch this one. Oh, man, this is going to be good. You sit back and you're shoving popcorn in your face and it's falling out. These idiots are fighting, people are running around in the street in all different directions, like a bunch of, like a zombie movie. And you just sit back. You did what Osama bin Laden did in 2001. I'm just saying it is quite possible there could have been rogue elements in the U.S. government that may have had something to do with that. Just throw that out there. But here's the bottom line. He lit a fuse. He gave them the Pearl Harbor they wanted, and it was the seeds of their destruction. The worst thing you can do. Look, what does a kid want? They want ice cream and candy and cake all day long. But what happens if you give them ice cream and candy? They never eat a vegetable. They never eat anything healthy. Their teeth are going to rot out. They're going to have teeth pain. They're going to be unhappy, right? The worst thing you can do a lot of times is give people what they want, right? So they gave them the information. They gave them information they needed in Germany they already knew who did it, but this was the definite information. It was what Julian Assange used to give people before they grabbed him and locked him up illegally, right? Here's the info, here's the data. You already suspected it. Here you go. Here's the evidence. Exhibit A. So now all they got to do is sit and wait. And it isn't like they did something wrong. If you ask me, they did something right. It's a good idea to tell people. If somebody's been robbed by a criminal, if somebody blows your house up, you come home and you're like, what happened? Somebody key scratched the car. Who was it? And the guy next door says, my camera was on. I saw it was Bob. Thanks. You're not going to say, oh, you're trying to cause trouble between me and Bob. No, you're going to say, thanks. I appreciate it. Right? You want to know it was Bob. Then you got to decide how you're going to deal with Bob. But you and Bob work together on the same job. How are you going to deal with Bob? Well, you know what? One of these days, Bob will make a mistake. And when he does, you will have your revenge, right? Okay. So let's go all the way back to the beginning to Dark Brandon, right? Let's go all the way back to Dark Brandon, right? Where he says, basically, let's go to this part. And they say, election denier Republicans, blah, 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 one final warning. So let's see what that is. And let's put this all together. It implies there's going to be a crackdown of some type after the midterms because they're going to get their asses kicked mercilessly. The funny thing is, it's the Democrats. Now, let me give you two scenarios. You ready? Scenario one, they get their butts kicked, stomped into the ground of biblical proportion. And I'm thinking to myself, that is what I would bet on. I would bet on him. I mean, who the hell's going to show up for Dark Brandon and his friggin' a group of insane mutts? Nobody in their right mind, right? So if nature takes its normal course, I expect them to get beaten pretty bad, and they're going to say, then they can, here's the thing, they got to launch a preemptive strike. Why? Because if the Republicans get in, then they're afraid the Republicans are going to investigate him and they're going to find out Dark Brandon. Well, the Republicans are pieces of crap. They're just another brainwashed cult. But they're concerned that they'll find some dirt on Dark Brandon. They'll find something on Fauci, and them and their friends will be, particularly with the COVID stuff, different things like that. The Republicans start sniffing around, turning rocks over. God only knows what they might find. These people are crooked as a barrel of fish hooks, right? Crooked as a rattlesnake, right? So they may find something. So what they may be looking at is saying, if we lose, right, we got till January when the Republicans get in. So and what do they say? The election deniers. So they'll say the Trump MAGA Republicans who won, they're the ones they're most afraid of because they're the ones that are going to have the vitriol. They're the ones that are going to say, let's do investigations. And might I add, the mainstream Republicans are not worth a shit. These are probably much better. You know how I feel about both parties, but they'll be subservient to the same powers as the Democrats. So when someone says, let's look into Hunter Biden, Ukraine, the mainstream Republicans, Democrats go, shh, no. We're all making money there. But some of these MAGA people might say, let's do it because they hate Biden enough. When they say, let's look into Pfizer, whoa, no, don't you do that. The mainstream Republicans will say the same. But some of these MAGA people might say, we don't give a shit. We're going to look into them. So they're very worried that some people may come in that don't play the game normally, right? As I said, I hate both parties. I'm an independent. But that being said, I'm just trying to be reasonable here with you. What they may be setting up is, so the people that they fear most that'll look into them, they can launch a preemptive attack. These people get elected and they can go after them and say they're an election denier, and God knows something could happen. Somebody could get hurt, shot, or killed. This could be, a false foot. They could start, they could crank up the conveyor belt on the false flag factory, and all kinds of things could happen. They blame some of the MAGA Republicans and they take them out before they get a chance to get sworn in. Right. And I'm just throwing stuff out there. I don't think it's unreasonable to think about this kind of stuff. Right. So they take them out before. So that's part of it. They launch this preemptive strike on them. That's a possibility. I think that we have to be concerned with. It's quite possible. That's what they're doing. They got to protect themselves because they're in a world of trouble. But meanwhile, in the EU, look, Where Dark Brandon goes, those schmucks that lead the EU will follow. So if Dark Brandon starts his crackdown, the schmucks in the EU know they're in deep and serious trouble. They know that it's possible that some of the Republicans might back off on some of the money. I don't know that they will. So, but again, think about who he's focusing on, right? The implication is the MAGA Republicans. If you look, let's see if we can find this. The implication, excuse me, for sneeze. Man, I'm sneezing, yawning, coughing, God knows. But if you look at this, if I can find it, forgive me for taking a minute. They say, give me a second. There we go. Yet now, let's look at it together. Right? Yet now, extreme MAGA Republicans aim to question not only blah, 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 the extreme MAGA element of the Republican Party, which is a minority of that party. So he has identified conveniently, Dark Brandon identified the very group of people that he fears the most, the very group of people who are the most likely to maybe go outside of the acceptable, of the Overton window of attacks on Biden. Let's face it, the mainstream Republicans are worth a crap. The other day, they did some they came up with some investigation of the origins of COVID. And what do you know? This is going to shock you. China, 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 China. Oh, we found it was China, and it wasn't China, and China, 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 and the Communist Party of China, because China, China, China. They're worthless. They are the Republicans, are the Democrats. The Democrats would do an investigation. You know what they'd find? Russia, 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 Putin, Putin, Putin. And the Republicans, the Democrats will find that Russia was responsible for everything, and the Republicans will find that China is responsible for everything. But he has identified the MAGA extreme Republicans. Why? Because they may not go along with the game. I'm not saying they might just go along with the game and it's all China's fault, right? But I do think there's some in that element that might say, let's take a look at some of this stuff. Pfizer, let's see what the hell. I want some documents. I want some emails between Fauci and Pfizer, Fauci and email, Fauci and Twitter, Fauci and Facebook, right? I want to look at Pfizer, what the heck they did. I want to look at, now the FBI is saying the Seth Rich, who was the guy who was the DNC computer guy, who was the DNC computer guy who took 2 bullets in the back after the leak of DNC information in Washington, D.C., the robbery where he was shot in the back twice and they didn't take anything. How can you have a robbery where the person shoots somebody in the back twice and didn't take anything? Well, the FBI have now said, we have the laptop, yes, and we'd be happy to give it up in 66 years. What happens if the Republicans say, sure, yeah, well, okay, but we want to see it now? And you can't, and we're the oversight committee, both the Senate and the House says you do not have the opportunity to say no, and we will defund you, and we will blah, 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 and we will hold you in contempt. And they do all the stuff that they did to Steve Bannon and these guys. And I'm no Steve Bannon fan by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm not an ideologue. And I think that we had a bit of a wild goose chase, a bit of a witch hunt going on there. But at any rate, so here's my point. He's identified the MAGA Republicans. Those are the people most likely to go after him. Those are the people most likely to go after Pfizer, go after they may look into some of the money for Ukraine, where to go, where the weapons go. You're not allowed to ask those questions. Some of the MAGA people might ask them. They may not play along with the game. They may not go along. They're Trump people. They may, Trump would ask questions you're not allowed to ask sometimes. They're scared to death of these people. And some of them are going to come in. So he's already identified them. Oh, they're election deniers. We got to take them straight to Camp X-ray to Gitmo. They're out of here. And at best, you saw what happened with Trump. Not that I'm a Trump fan by any stretch of the imagination. As I said, I hate both parties. But it's, if we can beat the crap out of them. We can attack them as long as we can and keep them off our backs by charging them with stuff, threatening them, going after them, investigating them. And that way we can keep them from investigating us, right? Meanwhile, let's face it, this graph's falling apart in Europe. People are in the streets, And it ain't gotten completely cold yet. The colder it gets, the angrier they're going to get. The more they're going to say, we want diplomacy, we want this damn thing over, we want to move on. And Biden can't do that because this is not what it appears to be. We know, you know, and I know the truth that this is about the neocons. This is about the Wolfowitz doctrine. The neocons trying to rule the world. They must first weaken China, Russia. They must then weaken China. They must weaken anybody who could be militarily, economically competitive, who could be a strong and independent nation, must be destroyed. So this has nothing to do with the security of Europe. It's bullcrap. It's the opposite. They are doing exactly what Russia's saying they're doing. They're trying to surround Russia, choke them out, and steal the country, and weaken and destroy Russia, and then China is next. However, the people in Europe got to eat. And when they can't eat, they ain't going to be happy. So Dark Brandon is going to set the pace here. Dark Brandon starts by saying, the people who are pushing back, we've got to do domestic terrorism laws, we got to go after them, and most importantly, these extreme MAGA Republicans who coincidentally might want to investigate me for some things that could be legitimate, they must be dealt with appropriately, right? And then he calls his lackeys in the Europe, you know, Schultz and whoever, Rishi Sunak, you name it, you might have some domestic terrorists there too. In fact, some of these people who are calling for you to give them food and water, electricity, things of that nature. Some of these politicians that are pushing in that direction, they could be Russian bots. Possibly they're up to no good. They're involved in miscreant activity. Maybe you need to pass some domestic terrorist laws. Maybe you need to investigate some of these people. Trust me, that crap's going to roll downhill. So Dark Brandon sees what's going on in Europe. He's going to figure out how to smite his enemies here, or at least continue to investigate and blah, blah. And you've seen it in the EU. Every time somebody in the EU stands up and says, hey, man, you know, the minister of something, they got ministers of things in Europe. I don't know what the hell, minister of whatever, right? The minister of ministers comes forward and says, guys, people are hungry and freezing. Maybe we need to rethink the way we're doing things here. He gets attacked as a Russian bot, a Putin lover. He must go. He's thrown out of office. He's disgraced. He was flogged, beaten, and completely degraded in public to make an example out of, right? Well, they can do that now. As the winter moves on, and the voices and the cries get louder for diplomacy. Because think about this. If your plan is to maintain a unipolar world, to rule the world, when you don't even have one now, that's another whole nother video. If your plan is to rule the world, diplomacy is a loss. Because what did the Russians say? I want you off my front door. And you ain't going to turn this country into a NATO military base. Not happening. And I will whoop ass and take names before I'll let that happen. And they went in there and they whooped ass and they took names. And what did they say? All of these NATO people. Well, if Putin wins, it's a loss for NATO. Well, at some point, it's going to be a loss for NATO. And NATO doesn't have the manpower that doesn't have the military power to go toe to toe with Russia. I don't believe they're going to do it. So at some point, see, here's the thing. People are just talking about the loss on the battlefield. Look, if you got a war, you got to have your people behind them. How the hell are you going to launch a war? Who's going to fight it? Hey, we're going to do a call up. We're going to call people up, and we're going to fill our military with people, and then we're going to go charge Russia. Really, where are the people? They're in the streets threatening to kill everybody in the government because they're freezing to death. That ain't going to work real well, is it? Not a good plan. Hey, guys, time to fight Russia. And they're like, we're going to hang you because we're hungry. We right now don't have time for that. We're hungry. We're going to drag you out of this parliament building, we'll put a rope around your filthy neck, and we're going to hang you by the neck until dead. That's what they're going to be looking at. And they're going to have to act on that. So Dark Brandon's trying to figure out how he can set the precedent to go after his political enemies. That's all it is. He's setting the precedent. He's coming up ways to take out his political enemies, his potential investigators. And trust me when I tell you this, that will be passed down to the EU. He will say to the EU, I expect you to do what I'm doing. Look at COVID. The policies that they came up with, Canada did. Hey, we're going to do lockdowns. Everybody did lockdowns. We're going to do COVID passes and blah, 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 whatever it was. Agree with them or disagree. I disagree with most of them, right? I disagree with mandates and things of that nature, but some people watching may agree with them. I'm not here to talk about those things. But what I'm saying is when the US empire at the top started doing something, it spread all over the place. It didn't just go one place. So when he starts his crackdown to stop his enemies, which he has no choice but to do, he doesn't have an alternative. Then guess what? He's going to say to all of his schmucky little poodles, do the same, and they will. That's why you need to think about it. Now, there is one other alternative. I'm just about out of here. I'm going to give that last alternative, which is a possibility. I don't know, but I got to throw all possibilities out. The other is that he doesn't lose, that they find some way, that maybe just luck, I don't know, the luck of the draw, maybe people forget the vote, but what do you know? The polls all say the dark Brandon's people are going to lose by 9 million, trillion votes, and they win by 9 trillion votes, right? In that instance, if there were people questioning the exit polls, hey, what happened? Well, the exit poll says you won by 20 votes. Oh, really? What is the final count? Hey, you lost by 57,000 votes. Something's amiss here, right? If that happened, again, I'm throwing out possibilities. Guess what? You're all prepared, because when somebody comes forward and says, hey, I got the polling here from all of the major polling companies says I was 10 points ahead. The exit polls that night says I won by 10 points and I lost by 37 points. Something's wrong here. I want an investigation, right? At that point, you can say, oh, that's exactly what an election denier / domestic terrorist would say. We got a place for you, brother. We got a place for you. It's called Camp X-Ray, Guantanamo Bay. Then you go after the person and what? Hey, man, look, you're an election denier. Again, oh, you election deniers. Polls, they don't really mean anything. Here's what we're going to deal with you. You're a threat to democracy. We've given you our one final warning, and you must be dealt with. Think about that. That is a possibility. So those are the things I'm throwing out. Holy moly, it's been an hour, and I don't like to talk too long. So let's see if there are some super chats. So let's go to, good old Salty Texas Trucker. What's happening? Thanks, Salty Texas Trucker. Good talk, sir. Thank you. You have an excellent way of explaining yourself for all to understand. Appreciate you. Thanks a lot there, Salty Texas Trucker. You're awesome. And let's next go with Joe Tuga says, thank you for keeping me sane. Well, I'm glad you're sane because I'm not. Let's keep going. And that's why I can make some sense. If you're sane, then you may even think that Dark Brandon's making sense. Okay, let's keep going. Brian Berner. Thanks a lot, Brian. I appreciate everyone who does anything to help keep the channel going. More questions. Sergey Luba Mudrov, thank you. I voted in every election since I became a U.S. citizen. This time I see no one on the ballot I live in Chicago to vote for. We'll have to abstain. I'm going to vote for a number of reasons. Number one, I'm voting third party. I'm voting third party all the way across. And I think it's important to do that. Every third party candidates I can, because I think I'm trying to make a point. I think everybody could. And I think if, little by little, we maybe can make a difference if we vote third party. How about this? Jocko Wadaido, not Jake. Curse you, autocorrect. Okay, thanks a lot. That is Post the Germany. Let's look at this. Post the Germany. Jocko Widodo is the only man who has met with both Putin and Zelensky to negotiate peace. He is hosting the G20 in Indonesia, where he has invited both Zelensky and Putin to meet in person, as well as Dark Brandon, Jinping, etc. Is everyone going to show up? Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if I would. I don't trust these bastards. If I was Putin, they're trying to, they may be up to no good. But who knows? We'll see. All right. Now, we got a couple people. Let's see. What do we got? Kim Martin says, you're a beacon in these scary times. Thanks a lot, Kim Martin. I certainly appreciate that. Oh, no. Laura says, I can't hear anything. I wonder what that's about. You may be better off, Laura. Dark Brandon expects a blue wave. Look, Dark Reddit expects with all the cheating and extended counts so they can produce more ballots. Anything could happen. Tony Blinken is a danger to every living organism on Earth. So let me say something about the election. For years, and I'll be pretty straightforward. But let me say this before I go. For many years, ever since they came out, I said we have to be very wary of these election machines. When these machines first came out, I'm in Baltimore. I mean, I'm in just outside of Baltimore, in the burbs, and there was a I think it was a John Hopkins. At John Hopkins, they did some kind of a study, and they found out that these machines were easily hackable. You know, the funny thing is, I'm in Venezuela. I was an election observer in Venezuela, and they use machines that weren't hackable. You know why? Because they can't be connected to the internet. They don't have a modem. You got to literally take the machine and like take the information out of it. It uses like Windows 98. So you cannot hack into it because there's no modem. There's no internet way to get in, right? It has to be handed taking the data out, right? But the bottom and guess what? They do a recount online and everybody can watch it. Here, that ain't happening. But here's my point. Um, um, Everybody's like, oh, there's trunks full of ballots and this and that. I just don't think that's how they do it. If in my belief is, look, if you're going to do something wrong or bad in the election, what's the easiest way to do it? You got machines that are easily hackable. Let's not forget. I could find the guy's name. You could easily look it up. In 2004, there were great questions about Ohio. There were great questions about those machines. There was a guy, I could look up his information right now. I don't feel like it. You could look it up yourself. I think his name was maybe McDonald, something like that. But this is easily researched. He had worked with the Bush family for years. He was their IT guy. He had admitted that something was rotten in Denmark, and he was scheduled. You see where I'm going with this? God rest his soul. He was scheduled to testify in court about it. He said, yeah, I'll go and I'll testify. 2 weeks before court, he was in a small plane, and I don't know what happened. I don't know how it happened, but he met an untimely demise. In the same way, you might remember this. There was a guy with Benjamin Netanyahu in his corruption case a few years ago. The guy was scheduled to testify against Netanyahu, and a couple weeks or a couple months before the testimony, he was in a plane going from point A to point B, and somewhere between point A, there was no point B. You see what I'm saying? So, these election machines are untrustworthy. And I truly think people that are like, oh, there's mail-in ballots, or, oh, somebody's got a trunk full of ballots. I really think that they're barking up the wrong tree. That's too easily traceable. That's too crude. They're like, don't give these people credit. They're not smart. First of all, why do you have to do that? If you've got machines that are easily hackable, if you've got machines that have proprietary software, nobody knows what the hell's going on in the machine. And some of the machines have no paper ballots. No way. Even if they have images, you can change that any way you want to of the ballots. And once the court asks for images, you throw them out anyway. You erase all the images. You see what I'm saying? Garland has always believed that the real weak spot in our election, if you are attacking something, what is the weak spot? The weak spot in our election is those damn machines. And I mean, come on, it's obvious. So it is quite possible that there could be an untimely turn of events, and Dark Brandon's party could do considerably better than the polls predict. And in that instance, there could be some people who will question the results and who may want to look at the computers, the machines, may want to ask some questions. And those people could then be named as some kind of miscreant actor. They could be named as a domestic terrorist. They could be violence. They could be connected to violence. The false flag factory could come open, and there could be, God only knows what could happen. So I'm just throwing that out there. There's any number of reasons where things can go bad. Somebody says Russia will launch a massive offensive. That's quite, no, look, I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I'm saying if I was Russia, I'd sit on my, I'd sit on my, I'd rest on my laurels. I would feign a few things. I'd do a few things, but I'd wait. If they're going to do it, they're going to wait till the ground gets good and hard anyway. They're going to wait till December, right? When the ground's frozen hard, maybe, into the real cold part of the winter, December, January, really, really cold in December, you act then. So they don't have to rush. That's all I'm saying. They don't have to rush. They can, to some extent, see how this thing plays out before they do whatever they're going to do. I want to see what somebody says. I've been called a lot of names. Just don't call me late for dinner. Yes, sir. That's an old one. Anything else? Well, thank you, everyone. Couple of things before I leave for the good of the order. Let me see. Did I miss anybody over here? I don't think I missed anyone. I didn't. Just a couple of things for the good of the order. And when I thank everybody for watching, last but not least, if you can see everything scrolling across the bottom, if you're on Twitter, Fritter, Smitter, I don't care where you are, go to my YouTube page and make sure you subscribe and click the little bell so you get notification. But even more importantly, go to my Rockfin page. That's where I want everybody. Rockfin.com, ROKFAIN.com/Garland Nixon. You see the stuff going across the bottom, because one of these old days, you hear the stuff I like to talk about. They may very well, could even likely toss me off of YouTube. And if so, I want everybody to know where to find me. Rockfin.com. It's free. However, if you really want to help the channel, I would appreciate Rockfin. It's free. You get to see everything, except there's like one show that I do a week that you don't get to see 99.9% of the stuff. But if you want to help the channel on Rockfin, $9.99 a month it costs to become a member. And you're a member of Rockfin, you help out the channel. That's great. And if you sign up for a year, they give you like 2 months free. So it's a good idea to do that. That's a way to contribute and help the channel. I certainly appreciate that. If you don't want to do that, just sign up for free. If you can't afford it, just sign up for free. And then there's lots of ways. We got patreon.com. If you can do $3, $5, $1, $100, whatever you can do a month, I appreciate that on Patreon. You can't do that, buy me a coffee's good. Buy me a coffee. They $5 each per coffee. If you want to do 1 or 1,000,000 of them, that's up to you. Certainly appreciate that. And of course, Cash App, my info is there. So anybody can help out the channel. I appreciate that. I appreciate if you don't have it, don't even worry about it. Enjoy the channel and just do this. If you've got other social media platforms, share it to your friends. Share it with your friends. Thanks a lot, everybody. I appreciate it. Chicken Patty. Thanks. Chicken Patty is the philosophical brains behind this channel. She maintains our moral compass. That's what Chicken Patty does. She maintains the moral compass of this channel. Thanks a lot, you all. Peace. I'm out. Oh, I almost forgot my email, garlandin@gmail.com. Once again, I'm out.